We begin today the Gemara on Daf Samech Amud Beis, about 15 lines up from the top of the Yamud, where it says Vayisave David. In the middle of Agadata here, the Gemara is going to bring psukim here from Shmuel, and the Gemara will dash in these psukim, and it's connected to the halachas that we learned before about the mazik of Eish. One of the things we learned over here was the mazik of Eish. If you're mazik something which is tamun, it's concealed, then you're potter for this. So this is part of the story, that's why it's brought up over here. So the pasuk says, "Vayisave David," and David desired. Vayomer, he said, "Mi yashkeni mayim mi boy beis lechem." Who will bring me water to drink from the pit that's in Beis Lechem, Asher B'Shar, which is there by the entrance. Vayivku shloishes hagiborim b'machne plishtim. So there were three mighty people that went and broke through the machne, the camp of the plishtim. And they drew the water from the pit that's by Beis Lechem, and they brought it to David HaMelech. So the Gemara, as we'll see here, understands that this is not referring to water physically that David HaMelech wanted to drink. It refers to mayim, which is Torah. That David HaMelech desired to have a certain psak din al pi Torah. And the Sanhedrin was there in Beis Lechem, and it was a danger to go there. But nevertheless, he wanted to ask them a question. So there were three Gibayrim that went into Beis Lechem, even though there was Plishtim there, and they went to ask the Sanhedrin the question. And that's the water that he wanted. Now, which Shaila and Torah did he ask? So there's a few opinions here. What was the Shaila? Amar Rav Nachman, Rav, it says in the name of Rav Nachman, Tomum Beish Kami Boile. His question was regarding when you burn something and there's something concealed inside, you have to pay for that. Iker Rabbi Yehuda, Iker Rabbanon. Do we pass like Rabbi Yehuda that says that you're chayav for this? Or do we pass like the Rabbanon that says that we learn out from Kama that you're potter for this, as we had before in the Gemara? Now, apparently this is in connection to what it says before in the psukim there, in the war that they were fighting, that they had burnt Tvua or something from Yidden that had things that were tamen inside. So David HaMelech wanted to know, are they chayav to pay for this or not? And they answered him, whatever they answered him. We don't know what the answer was. But this was the question that David HaMelech asked. Rav Huna says, no, if you look there in the psukim, you'll see there's other things that the pasuk talks about. It talks there about piles of grain. It says there, Gedishim d'Sa'orim, there were piles of grain, of barley, and who did these piles belong to? The Yisrael Hava. They belonged to Yidden. But the problem was, the Hava Metamri Plishtim Bohu. There were Plishtim that were hiding inside these piles of grain. The Kami Boyele, and the Shaila David HaMelech had was, Ma'u lahatzel atzmai b'mamin chaveirei. Is he allowed to save his life from these Plishtim that are hiding there to attack him by burning the piles of barley that belong to Yidden? So you're destroying the possessions that belong to Yidden in order to save yourself from those Plishtim that are hiding there and saving your life. That was a Shaila. Actually, a machlokes about this, what this means. In Taisvis here, it clearly says that there's no question that if it's Pekuach Nefesh, that you're allowed to destroy someone's possessions or money in order to save your life. The question, though, is, after that's done, will you have to reimburse the Yid that you destroyed his possessions, his money? But in Rashi, though, it's simply mashma that the Gemara is asking the question in the literal sense. Are you even allowed to destroy your friend's possessions or money in order to save your life? Maybe you're not allowed. It's very hard to understand that, but that's how it's mashma and Rashi. In Shulchan Aruch, though, the psak din is that one is definitely allowed to damage his friend's possessions or money in order to save his life. So Sholchulei, they answered him, Asr lahatzel atzmai b'mam chaveirei. It's not allowed to save your life with damaging your friend's property or money. Okay? As I mentioned, according to Taistus, that means that you're going to have to pay back. Okay, you're allowed, but you'll have to reimburse. That's the psak in Shulchan Aruch. Aval, but then they said to him, Ata melechata, you however are a king. And therefore melech peiritz lasais loy derech. A king can break through his way to go wherever he needs to go. And therefore for you could save yourself with burning down these piles of grain or piles of barley, and you won't have to pay back. You're a melech. So this thing also of melech peiritz geder, it's brought in there are other places as well. There's a machlokes Rishonim about this as well, whether it refers to melech peiritz geder only if it's in relations to specific things that are needed for the kingdom, like you need to pave a road in order to have for the people and so on, or for the melech, or even for the melech privately, something that he needs for himself. You also say melech peiritz geder. You can't protest against the king. So therefore you can go and do whatever you want and you're not going to have to pay. That's the second. That's Rav Huna's pshat here. V'Rabbanon v'teimer Rabba Bamari Amru. Third pshat in what the shaila. When David mounted the water, there was a shaila in halacha that he was asking. What was the shaila? So they said as follows: Gedishim the Sa'orim the Yisrael havu. Like we said before, there were the piles of grain of barley that the pasuk there talks about, but also Gedishim the Adashim the Plishtim. But then there was also piles of lentils that belonged to the Plishtim. So, because if you look over there at the psukim, there's the way this is described in Shmuel, and then there's the way this is described in Divrei Hayomim. In one place it says that there was piles of barley, and another place it says it was piles of lentils. So therefore, this pshat is saying that there was both. The kamibayoluhu, and therefore the shaila was mahu little gedishin shel sa'orim the Yisrael little lifnei behemtei. The barley is good animal feed. So David HaMelech wanted to know if he can take from this to feed his animals. Almenas l'shalim. Gedishin shaladashim the Pelishtim, and he's going to pay back. He's going to pay back later. He doesn't have yet those lentils. He didn't conquer yet that territory of the Pelishtim to be able to pay back the Yidden with those lentils from the Pelishtim. But he's going to conquer that territory, and then he's going to pay back those lentils to the Yidden. Okay, from the Pelishtim. Now the lentils are much better quality. They're much better than the Sa'orim. The Sa'orim is more barley is more used for animal feed. So he wanted to know if you could take it, steal it, so to speak, and then he'll pay back. So they answered him, no, that really al pi halacha this is not allowed. The pasuk says, Chavel Yoshev Rasha Gzele Yishalem. A Rasha takes a collateral or he steals without asking, and then later he pays back. That's a Rashi. You're not allowed to do that. Aval Pisha Gzele Mishalem. Even if when you steal you pay back, but Rasha still you're a Rashi. You're not allowed to take and then pay back. Aval, but they told him, Ata Melech Ata, you're a king. A Melech Peiritz Lasas Lederach. A king may break any way to go in anywhere to go where he has to. No one can protest against him. So you're allowed to do this. Those are the three pshatim, the Shiloh of David HaMelech.
Where does this gather, Melech Peiritz gather come from?
This Inyan, what's the source of this Inyan of Melech Peiritz? Melech Peiritz, okay. So it's Gemara in Sanhedrin. I think, no? Okay. Okay, so the Gemara says now like this. The three pshatim. Let's see how it fits into the context of the psukim here. According to the opinion that says that the shaila over here was like the last pshat, that he wanted to know, could he use the barley and then pay back with the lentils that he's going to conquer from the Plishtim? So that's why in one pasuk we find, in the pasuk in Shmuel it says, when it describes the story, that the place over there was full, there was lentils. But another pasuk when it describes the story in Divrei Hayomim it says that it was full of barley. So that's the explanation, that he wanted to take barley and pay back with the lentils of the Plishtim. But according to the opinion that says that he wanted to know if he's allowed to burn the piles, because there was Plishtim that were hiding inside these piles of Sa'irim. So why are there these two psukim? Why is it changing? Once it says that there was barley here, and the other one it says that there was lentils here. The Gemara says, even according to this pshat, he'll answer you, the Havanami Gedishim da Adashim, the Yisrael, the Havametamru Plishtim, there were both. There were Plishtim that were hiding there in the piles of that belonged to Eden. There were piles of barley that they were hiding in. There were piles of lentils that were hiding in. And the Shiloh was asked about both. So the psukim are, they're mashlim one another. But it's not talking about exchanging. It's this place that they were hiding. Now that question the Gemara asks, according to the pshat, the second pshat that says that he wanted to know if he's allowed to burn this to save himself. This is what the pasuk then there says, that he saved this area, that he did not end up burning it. Meaning that David HaMelech, even though he was given the psak, that he's a melech, and he's allowed to go and burn it, even though usually you say you can't save yourself with your friend's money, but over here David HaMelech decided that he's going to take the halacha and not going to use the rights that he has as a melech. So that's what it means. The shaila was, should he burn this place down? And he decided to save it and not burn it down. But according to the opinion that says that he wanted to exchange it, what does it mean that he saved it? He wasn't planning on burning it down. That wasn't the question, Bachla. So what does it mean that he saved? He saved it from what? So the Gemara explains, no, it fits with this pshat as well. Even though he wasn't planning on burning it, but he was planning on using it and then paying back the money. So he didn't even allow them to use it and then pay back. He just left it as is. He didn't take it for animal feed from the barley. He had to switch it. That's what it means when it says vayatzila, that he saved it and left it as is. Another question the Gemara asks, according to these two pshatim, take terei kroi. This is why it says over here the two psukim that are actually Rashi Yeah, it says over here these two psukim that there was these piles and that he saved them. He didn't use them even though he was allowed because he was a king. Yeah, so that's understood. But but according to the opinion that it says that the Shiloh was about whether something that gets burnt in a fire and it's Tomun is inside. Are you responsible for that? That was a Shiloh. My iboyle kroi. Why do you need these psukim over here? What are these psukim saying over here? The question over here is, if the Shiloh was about Tomun Beish, it's really a Shiloh about something that had already happened before. That in the battle that was happening before, they had burned something which was Tomun Beish. And David HaMelech wanted to know whether they're chayav to pay for that. It's not about a Shiloh of something of the future here that he wanted to know if you could use it or if you could burn it. So all these psukim that talk about these piles of barley or piles of lentils, what are these psukim doing here? So the Gemara says, Amalach, even according to the first pshat that we said here, he's going to have to answer you that really, you're right, there was two different shilohs that David HaMelech asked. Tomun v'chodem mahanoch. There's the shiloh about Tomun, and that's understood from the hemshech of the psukim, because earlier it talks about a case where they already burned things and wanted to know if you have to pay for things that were hidden inside. And v'chodem mahanoch, and then there's the psukim over here, and we have to say one of the other pshatim that we said, either that the question was whether he could burn to save his life, or he can burn, or he could use and then exchange, but there has to be also another question that was asked according to this opinion. So it's Tama v'chodem mahanoch kami boyalei. Another question the Gemara asks, Bishloim b'laman da'omar hani tarti hainu d'chsiv. Over here, the two pshatim that it says, that David HaMelech wanted to know whether he can burn it right now. Is he allowed to burn it to save his life? Or could he use it for animal feed and then he'll pay back later? So then, what does the pasuk there end up saying? The waters that he received, he did not want to drink. Which means he didn't want to fulfill the actual psak. Even though they told him, you're a melech and you have the right to do so, but he didn't drink the waters means he didn't take that ability that right that he had, and he decided not to burn, not to exchange. So that's understood. So Omar, because David HaMelech said to himself, Kivin de'iki Yisura, since this is really something which is asur, if I wasn't a king, le'nichali, I don't want to use the opportunity or the ability that I have as a king to do this. But according to the one that says that the Shiloh over here was about Tomun Be'esh, so this was a psaktin that they gave him about something that had already happened before. That was the Shiloh. So Mechti, Gemara Hu D'Shalchale. According to this psak, so the Sanhedrin that they went to ask the question from gave them back a psak. So what does it mean that he didn't want to accept this psak? Why not? What is there not to accept about this? They gave him the psak, whether you paskin like Rabbi Yehuda or the Rabbanon. So what is there not to accept? So Gemara says a very interesting thing. The loy amrinon mishmayu. David HaMelech, these three gebayrim that went and risked their lives, they went to the Sanhedrin to get this psaktin. He didn't want to say over the psaktin in their names. Even though usually when you say over a halacha, you're always supposed to say it in the name of the person that's saying the halacha. Here though, he didn't want to say it in the name of these three gebayrim. Why not? Omar, he said that they made a mistake, that they risked their lives to go to the Sanhedrin to get this psaktin. I have this as a tradition from the Bezdin of Shmuel. A person that risks his life to go to get a psaktin, you shouldn't give over the halacha in his name, because then people will think that you're supposed to do this. Right, so over here, they went to a place into the territory of the Plishtim, and in a place of danger to go through to get to the Sanhedrin, to be able to get a psaktin. They weren't supposed to do that. Right, so this is not talking about when you have the Indian that it says that when a person learns Torah, you have to be meimis atzmai in learning. A person has to fully dedicate himself into learning. It's a different Indian. Over here, we're talking about a simple question: is a person allowed to put his life into danger to go ask a Rav Shaila to go? And the answer is no, you're not allowed to. So therefore, because they did this when they weren't allowed, he didn't end up saying the halacha in his name, in their name. Then the pasuk says, "Vayasa chaysam l'Hashem." David HaMelech poured this water for the Eibishter. What does it mean that he poured this for the Eibishter? So again, this is all a mashal regarding this halacha. It's not talking about water, but it means that he gave it to the Eibishter. Now, according to the opinions that say that the pshat over here was that he wanted to know if he's allowed to burn down the bushes of Yidden or the piles of Yidden, or he wanted to know if he could use it, and so on. So when it says he poured it, what it means is, for the sake of heaven, he did not actually use the heter that he had. So therefore, the psak din that he got, he didn't implement it. He just poured it down for the Eibishter's sake, meaning that he didn't take the heter. That's what the pasuk is saying. But according to the opinion that says that it was a shaila about something that had already happened, what's the halacha regarding this thing that was tomen, in fire? So when it says here, "Mai vayasa chaysam laHashem," when it says here that he poured it, meaning that he didn't use it. What do you mean he didn't use it? Why didn't he use the psak din? We're not talking about whether implementing the psak din for the future. It's a psak din regarding something that had already happened for the past. So if he got the psak din, why didn't he implement it? So the Gemara again goes back to the same point we said before. He did implement the psak, but the Gemara. However, he said the psak, when he implemented the psak, he said that this is the tradition. He didn't say it in the names of the ones that brought this psak, because they did something they were not supposed to do. They risked their lives. And Yid is not allowed to put his life physically in a sakana in order to get a psak din from a Sanhedrin like they did over here. That's what it means, that detail of what he should have done, said it in their name. No, he poured it out. He didn't say it in their name. Regarding again a person that is making a fire in his property, and the fire spreads and burns in another person's property. So over geder shu gavoya dal damas. If the fire, you made a fire in your property, and there was a big brick wall there, and the fire passed over the wall, and this wall was 4 amas high, and it passed over. Or there was the fire in your property, and then there was a big road. And how wide is this road? Rashi says that derech harabim is 16 amas, like we see by Shabbos, that the Rishus Harabim is 16 amas. Or nahar, or there was a river separating your property and someone else's, and still the water, the fire that is, skipped over and it went over to the other person's property. For that kind of damage, you're potter, because this is not any negligence on your behalf. This is something that is supernatural, or it must have been something unusual, a wind or whatever that brought the fire over, and that's something you can't expect. So you're potter. But in a Braisa we learned, if the fire passed through a wall which is 4 amas high, chayiv, you are going to be chayiv for the damage of this fire. And the Mishnah said that it's 4 amas high potter. Rav Papa says that it depends how you're measuring this. It's the same shear, but it's just the intention of the words of the Tana, the Mishnah, and the Braisa are different. Tana didon kachashiv mamayla lamata. The Tana on our Mishnah, when he's talking about this wall, he's speaking about the height of the wall, starting with a higher wall and making his way down to a lower wall. And therefore, what he's saying, the way you understand the Mishnah is as follows: Sheish amas, if the wall was 6 amas high, potter. So that's tall enough that you potter. Chamish amas, if it was only 5, you still potter. Ad arba amas, a wall or up to 4 amas, you'll still be potter. So in our Mishnah, when it uses the term ad arba amas, it means, or dalat amas, it means up to ad dalat amas, including ad va'ad b'chlal, including 4 amas, it's still high enough that if the fire crosses over, you'll be potter. Tana B'ra, however, the Tana in the Braisa, he's speaking about the height of the wall, starting from a lower wall, working his way up. And he's saying as follows: Shtei amas, if the wall is only 2 amas high, chayiv. For that, you'll still be chayiv. Shalosh amas, if it's 3, also, you'll still be chayiv. Ad arba amas, up to a height of 4 amas, you're going to be chayiv. Now, when he says up to the height, he means up to. Ad v'loyad b'chlal. Up to the height of 4 amas, you're still going to be chayiv if the fire crosses over. But if it's actually 4 amas high, then you're going to be potter. So it's the same halacha as our Mishnah. Amar Rava says, Dalad amas sha'amru de potter. When it says here in the Mishnah that you potter for the fire that crosses over, when you have that wall that's 4 amas high, afilu b'zdei kaitzim, even if it's a field that has in it thorns, which is very flammable and the fire can spread easily, the wall of 4 amas is good enough to stop the fire from spreading. Rav Papa explains, what do we mean when we say the height of the wall is 4 amas? It doesn't mean the height from the ground. It means from the top of the thorns. The wall has to be 4 amas above that in order for it to block the fire from spreading. Now Rav's explained over here the Mishnah that says that you potter when you have. So there's actually 2 pshatim here. I'll tell you first the first pshat in Rashi that Rav here is talking about the wall that's 4 amas high. Said you potter then. So lo yishanu, when was this said that you potter? Ela b'koilachas, only with a kind of fire that's a blaze that goes straight up. So then, in order for it to prevent it from spreading, If you have a wall that's 4 amas high, it's not going to spread to another property naturally. But if there's a fire that's nechfefes, which means that there's a wind that blows it sideways. This is a kind of fire that doesn't blaze straight up, but it goes sideways, and the wind takes a flame of this fire and brings it to another place. So then, afilad meya ama chayiv. Even if you have a wall that's 100 amas high, but because this is a wilder fire, it's a kind of fire that's going sideways, and the wind is blowing it from area to area. So even with a wall of 100 amas high, such a fire you're going to be responsible for. That's one pshat in Rashi. Another pshat in Rashi is, we're not talking here about a wall, it's talking over here about what it mentioned in the Mishnah, the derech harabim, when you have the road in between that's separating 16 amas, and then the fire doesn't spread. And what the Mishnah is saying is that you have two kinds of fires. You have a kailachas, a fire that has a flame that goes, a blaze that goes straight up, and then you have maybe what's called today like this bush fire, this fire that's very low on the ground, and it catches on to very, very little things, and it travels it's a very sneaky fire that travels, like this low bush fire that travels. So what it's saying is, regarding the road that separates, if it's this tall fire that's going up, so then a road in between will separate and the fire won't spread. But if it's an echfefes, which means this low bush fire that catches on to these little things on the ground, even with a road, it will spread over. That's the second shot in Rashi. Okay, and Shmuel argues in this. Shmuel says, Masnisim ben echfefes. The Mishnah, when it talks about the wall, it's telling you that Adarabah, the need for this wall that's 4 amas high is when it's this kind of fire which is spreading sideways through the wind. Or if Shmuel's talking about the second shot of Rashi, when is there a need to have this wide road in between? When it's this bush fire that's spreading very low. If it's a fire that's blazing straight up, and you see that it doesn't go sideways, it doesn't spread, it just is a blaze straight up, then I feel a kol shu potter. Any kind of separation, you make the fire in your property, and there's any kind of separation from your property to the others, you're going to be potter if it spreads, because this is a kind of fire that naturally does not spread. Tanya will say that Rav, and Abraisi we learned like Rav. When did it say in our Mishnah that you have to have a separation? That's if the fire is going straight up. But if it's going sideways, and there's wood that it can catch onto and spread, then afila ad meya mil chayiv. Then even if there's a separation of 100 mil, this fire can still find its way to spread, and you're still going to be chayiv. Okay, so in the lashon of this brayse, it's not talking about a situation of a wall. That's clear. Even though before in the machlekes of Rav and Shmuel, Rashi said two pshatim, but here in this brayse, it's talking about when you have a fire and you have a road in between that separates. So it's saying that if it's a fire that doesn't blaze straight up, but it's a fire that goes sideways over there, it could spread even if there's a separation of 100 mil, which is a pretty far distance. But still, the fire could spread. Such a kind of fire is a wild fire, and it could spread. Now the brayse says another halacha, similar to what it said in our Mishnah, Ovra Nahar, if fire spread through a river, or a shlulis, which the Gemara will soon explain what a shlulis is. Shehem rechavim ches ames, what's the width of this river or shlulis? 8 ames, potter. Then you'll be potter and the fire spreads. Okay, so now the Gemara will soon explain shlulis, but first it comes back to what it said in the Mishnah. Derech harabim, that if you have the road of a rabim, you're going to be potter. So man Tana, who's the Tana of our Mishnah that says that the separation for the fire not to spread is the derech harabim, which is 16 ames. Amarave Rabbi Lazihi. This is Rabbi Laz's opinion. The Tanan, because we learned in the Mishnah, this is actually the next Mishnah that we're going to learn right here on Amud Beis. Rabbi Eliezer Oime Sheishes Ra'ame Amois Kederech Rishus Harabim. That it's the 16 amas, the width of the derech harabim. That's the width that you potter if the fire spread, or potter some matter potter. So then it's not exactly the Mishnah Amud Beis, then it's a brayse. But we'll see. The next Mishnah, the Mishnah will bring a few opinions of exactly how wide the area has to be in order for the fire not to spread. Our Mishnah is a stam Mishnah saying like Rabbi Lazar, even though the next Mishnah will actually bring a machlekes about this. Then the Mishnah said, a river separates. Rav Amar, Nahar Mamish. When the Mishnah says a river, it means literally a river. Shmuel Amar, Arisa de Daloi. The river here does not mean a river, it means a water channel, where you have water that is going into to irrigate fields. That's the kind of river we're talking about. Says the Gemara Mandam and Nahar Mamish, the one that says that we're talking literally about a river, Afakav de Lekamaya. So then this river that separates, even if the river is not dried up, it's still going to be a separation. A river is a place which is deep and it still has some moisture in it, even after it dries up, so it's still going to be a separation. The one that says that it's this water channel, which is not so deep, it's just 1 amah deep, we had it before. So then if there's actually water in it, then it'll be a separation. If it dried up and there's no water in it, it's not going to be a separation. Okay, now here the Gemara brings a Mishnah in Masechta Peyeh, which will explain us what shlulis means, which was mentioned before. So Tanan Hasam, the Mishnah in Peyeh says, Ve'elu mafsikin lePeyeh. The following things will be a separation and a property for the mitzvah of Peyeh. So when you have the mitzvah of Peyeh to leave on the corners of the field for the poor people, what determines if it's one property or it's two separate properties and you have to leave for each field separately the Peyeh? So these are the things that separate the fields one from another. Hanachal, if you have a stream of water that runs between them, or v'hashlulis, or if you have a shlulis, or derech hayachid, a pathway, even just for an individual to go through, which is just 4 amas wide, and v'derech harabim, or a pathway for a rabbin, which is 16 amas wide. Says the Gemara, my shlulis. What is this shlulis that separates properties from one another? Amar Rav Yudah Amar Shmuel. So Rav Shmuel's pshat is mokim shemeg shamim shailin sham, an area where rainwaters gather there. So the word shailin means to gather. That's one shot. Rav Bevai, Rav Yochanan, he says that amas hamayim, this is a pool of water. Shemachalekas shalal agapeh. They created these pools of water in the middle of the fields, so when this pool of water gets filled, it flows over and it irrigates the property around. So that's what it's talking about. This place that they created for this purpose. So the Gemara explains, Mando, makim shemek shamim shailim sham, the one that says that it's the place where the rainwaters gather there, and that's considered to be a separation. Koshken amasamayim, definitely an area which they actually designed and made, amasamayim, a pool where the water gathers. For sure, that's considered to be a separation. That's two separate fields. The one that says that it's a place where the rainwater gathers, amasamayim, it's a pool of water that they dug and made and designed specially. That's a separation. But if it's a place where the rainwater gathers, that's not considered to be a separation, so it should be two separate fields for Peyeh. Because this is just considered to be the pools of the field. It's part of the field. No field is exactly flat. It has areas that has places where rainwater puddles and gathers there. That doesn't create a real separation from one field to another. Most Mefarshim say that this distinction the Gemara is making here now is all regarding Peyeh, but this doesn't apply to what we spoke about before, which is the separation of one property and another regarding the responsibility of lighting a fire. It's a different story. So here this Mishnah will bring more details and more opinions about making a separation that your fire shouldn't spread. How far of a separation does it have to be? So hamadlik b'toich shaloi, a person lights a fire in his property, at kama tavar adleka. How far could you expect that the fire is going to spread to someone else's property and it's your responsibility? And how far do you say that no, it will not pass, it will not spread? If it's in the middle of a base core, so that's the amount that you have to have in order to separate from your property of another. So how big is a base core? A base core, if I remember, is 147 amas by 147 amas. Do I have it right? 274. Right. The 274 amas by 274 amas. Okay, very good. So if you're lighting the fire in the center of that base core, of that base core, so then you have the space of 137 amas on one side and 137 amas on the other side. So it comes out that you need 137 amas to separate from where the center of the fire is to where it could spread to another person.
An
amma is about 1.5 feet, roughly.
Wow.
Okay, that's Rabbi Elazar ben Azari's opinion. Rabbi Elazar, which was mentioned before, and that's what the previous Mishnah said. Tezai amas kederech reshus harabim. As long as you have 16 amas, like the way of reshus harabim, that's the amount that separates from one property and another that the fire shouldn't spread. Rabbi Kiva oimer chamishim amas. Rabbi Kiva says 50 amas as a separation. Rabbi Shimon oimer, the pasuk says, "Shalem yishalem hamaver es habe'era," that the one that made the fire has to pay. Hakoil lefi hadleika. The extra word habe'era is saying you can't give one amount to separate for a fire not to spread. It depends on what kind of fire it is. Habe'era. Look at the nature of the fire itself. Okay, now the Gemara will address here the opinion of Rab Shimon. Does Rab Shimon not hold to this concept that there's a shear by fire that you have to have for a separation, that it shouldn't spread? In other words, the Gemara It sounds like Rab Shimon was saying that there's no shear. No matter what, you're always going to be chayav. There's no shear for this at all. Says the Gemara, but we see in a Mishnah that says what nan. The Mishnah says as follows: Lo yamid adam tanor b'toich habayis. A person should not put an oven inside a house that has an open fire in it. We're talking about the ovens the way they were made then, which had a fire inside of it, and it's not covered the way it is today. So you can't have your oven in the house. Elam ken yeshal gabe goyve dal damas. You have to have above the oven a space of 4 amas so that it shouldn't reach to the ceiling and then burn the house. If you're placing this tanner, this oven, on the second floor, so then so then the floor itself has to have plaster. It has to have a thickness of 3 tvachim for the fire, the heat and the fire inside the oven, not to burn the floor. Ubikira, if it's an oven which is called kira, which is an oven that has a smaller fire and the heat of it, the fire is not as large as inside the tanur, so there tefach. The floor, it's enough if it's a tefach thick that the heat should not affect the floor. Now, either way, the Tana Kama here holds v'im hizik, mishalem asher hizik. Even if you took these precautions, it doesn't matter. If the fire of your oven ends up damaging the other person's house or roof or whatever it is, you're going to have to pay for the damage that you caused. However, Rab Shimon argues and says, we're giving you these shiurim that if you took these precautions, if you made that space of 4 amas above your oven or 3 tvachim thickness of a floor, so then if it ends up still damaging, you'll be potter because you took the right precautions. So you see here clearly that Rab Shimon says that there is this concept of distancing, of taking the precautions that your fire shouldn't spread, and if you took that precaution, you're going to be potter. So why in our Mishnah is Rab Shimon saying that there's no shear, hakay lefi adleka, which the Gemara understood means that Rab Shimon is saying no matter what, there's no shear. If the fire spread, you're going to be chayav. That's not what he meant. Rab Shimon didn't mean that either way you're going to be chayav. What he meant to say is hakay lefi gaiva hadleka. Yeah, there is a shear, but you can't give one specific shear, 16 amas, 50 amas. You're going to have to see the size of the fire, and that will tell you what kind of a shear it is that you had to separate, that it shouldn't spread to another property. So you can't give one set shear. That's all he meant to say. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, halacha ke Rab Shimon. We pass like Rab Shimon, v'chen Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, halacha ke Rab Shimon. Zok the Heilige Mishnah, here comes the actual Mishnah that discusses the halacha of Taman. Something that's hidden inside something, do you have to pay for that if you end up burning it? If you burn down someone's pile of grain, and there were vessels inside of it, and it also burnt. Rabbi Yehuda says for those vessels that were hidden inside, you have to pay for it. You don't pay for what's hidden inside the fire. As the Gemara before brought the source because it says kama, only something which is standing and opening like wheat that stands in a field. So what do you pay for? You pay for the value of the pile of whether it's whatever grain it is, if it's wheat or barley. So that area as well where the person says there were kalim inside, we see it as if no, it was chitim there and you pay that value. Another halacha, this seems to be unrelated, but the Mishnah brings this in over here. Haya gedi kafasla, you burnt down someone's pile of grain, and there was also a goat that was tied there, and ve'eved samuchloi, and there was also a slave of this person that owns this pile that was standing over there, and v'nisra fimai, and this slave got burned together from the fire. All of this got burnt. Chayev, you're going to be chayev to pay for the pile of grain that you burnt down, and for the gedi, for the goat that you burnt. Even though you also burnt an eved, you're still going to be chayev. Now, what's the point that the Mishnah is saying here? That when the eved got burnt, you're not considered to be a murderer. Because this eved, he's standing there like a golem. Why didn't he run away? He wasn't tied down there. So the fact that he ended up getting burnt, that's his choice. That's his fault. So therefore, you're not chayiv miseh. So if you're not chayiv miseh, so then you pay for the money damage that happened. However, eved kafas loi, if the eved that was there was tied, or gedi samuch loi, and there was a gedi that was near over there, v'nisar fimai, and it got burned, so then potter. Then you're going to be potter for paying for the damages of the pile of grain or for the goat that got burnt. Why? Because the eved that was tied there and you lit the fire and he got burnt, you're a murderer. So you're chayiv miseh. Come labor the rabbaneh. Once you're chayiv miseh, you don't pay for any money damages. There's another detail that Asher brings up over here. There's a machlokes, there's two pshatim regarding this gedi. when you burn this gedi, are you chayiv for the gedi only when the gedi is tied, because then the gedi can't run away? Or are you chayiv for the gedi even when it's not tied, because we don't say regarding a goat that it could run away. It doesn't have the proper das to understand that it has to run away. So it depends how you learn over here. Because in the first part of the case over here it said gedi kofusloi, and here it says gedi samuchloi. Right, so you could learn the pshat of the Mishnah over here is that the gedi is samuchloi and you potter because of kamle b'derab mineh. That's one detail. But you could also say that the Mishnah is saying a second point, that the reason why you would be potter for the gedi is not only because of kamle b'derab mineh. Even if it wouldn't be kamle b'derab mineh, you potter for the goat anyways because the goat was not tied. So then the goat should have just walked away. Those are two pshatim here in Rashi. Okay, now the Gemara comes back to the original din of the Mishnah regarding the Petur of Tamun. The Chachamim say that you burn someone's pile and inside there was something hidden, you don't pay for that, you just pay for the value of what the grain, whatever it was. But Chachamim will agree to Rabbi Yehuda, b'madlik es abira, that if you light someone's house on fire and inside the house there's all kinds of things that are hidden that are there inside, so you pay for everything that's inside. The Chachamim will agree that you do pay for whatever it was contained and hidden inside. I said bira refers to a person's house. That's usually the way it's taich, but over here later Rashi taiches bira means a migdal gadol, which sounds to be like a big large closet. And inside this large closet, the person says there was all kinds of things that I had stored in there. So for that, he's going to agree that you have to pay for whatever was stored inside. Why? Because that's normal for a person to have all kinds of things contained in a house and in a closet. So the Chachamim agree that you have to pay for everything inside. That's not called Taman. So the Gemara Rav Kahana explained another detail where Chachamim do not argue with Rabbi Yehuda. Machlekes b'madlik b'teich shalei. The whole argument whether you have to pay for tamun or not is if you lit a fire in your property and then it spread to the other person's property. And it went and consumed and spread to the friend. The Rabbi Yehuda machayev and iske tama baish. It's here where Rabbi Yehuda says that you still have to pay even for what's concealed. And Rabbana patri. And here Rabbana say that you pater. If you lit the fire there in your friend's property directly, that mishalom kol masha b'toichai. Here everybody agrees that you have to pay for everything that was contained inside, for everything that was hidden. That was what Rav Kahana said. So now on this, Amalei Rava, so Rava asked him, if so, coming to our Mishnah, where our Mishnah brings up a case where Chachamim are Maida. So the Tani Sefer, why does it say in the Sefer of our Mishnah? Ma'idnim Chachamim Rabbi Yehuda, that when the Chachamim agree to Rabbi Yehuda that you pay for what's hidden inside. B'madlik es habira, if you lit someone else's house or closet on fire. Shemishalem kol ma shebetoichai, that you pay for everything that's inside. Shekain derech b'nei adam laniach bebatim, because it's normal for people to hide things over there inside, right? So the Mishnah is even speaking in a case where you lit a fire in your own property and it spread to the other person's property. But over here the Mishnah said, but when it spread to the other person's property, it didn't light his pile of grain on fire. It lit his house on fire. So here Chachamim will be minded that you do pay for tamun. Why is the Mishnah bringing up this case that they're maida? Lifleig v'lisni b'dida. Why doesn't the Mishnah talk about the grain, the pile of grain itself that it speaks about in the Reisha? And the Mishnah should say, Bamed dvarim amurim, regarding this pile of grain, when is there a machlekes that Chachamim say that you potter for tamun, b'madlik b'teich shaloi, if you lit a fire in your property? And then v'achla b'teich shachaveda, and it went and burnt and consumed in your friend's property. If you lit the fire directly in your friend's pile of grain, everybody will agree that you pay for everything that's hidden inside. Why didn't the Mishnah make this distinction? So the Gemara answers, Elo Marove. So therefore Rava explains that really there are three different halachas about this, according to the Chachamim, as we'll see here. Betarti pligi. There are two different points that the Chachamim are arguing with Rabbi Yehuda, and when he's maided to Rabbi Yehuda, there are two different points here. Pligi b'madlik b'toich shaloi. One point is where you light the fire in your own property, and then it spread into your friend's property. The Rabbi Yehuda machayev atam beish. Rabbi Yehuda says even in such a case you pay even for what was hidden there. And Rabbana savri loy machayev. And Chachamim say that you're not going to be chayev for what's hidden over there in your friend's property. Or pligi, and that's one machlekes. Or pligi nami b'madlik b'shel chaveiroi. And then there's also the machlekes. There's a second machlekes. Even though when you light the fire in your friend's property, so over here to some extent Chachamim are going to be maida that you will pay for what's hidden inside, but they're not completely maida. They're still going to argue to some extent. The Rabbi Yehuda Savar, in such a case where you light the fire directly in your friend's property, so over here Rabbi Yehuda holds, Mishalim kol ma shebetoichai, that if a person had in his pile of grain hidden, whatever it may be, the most strangest thing that a person never hides inside a pile of grain, and it was hidden inside the pile of grain, you have to pay for that. Even if it was a wallet of money, which is not usually hidden inside a pile of grain. But Rabbanan Sabri, Rabbanan over here, to some degree they will agree to Rab Meir, that Rabbi Yehuda that is, that you pay for what's hidden inside. But depends what it is. If it's such kind of utensils that it's normal for it to be hidden inside of a pile of grain, Kagoy Murigin or Klei Bakar. Murigin and Klei Bakar are different utensils that are used. How do they translate Murigin over there? The what? The threshing tools and other different things that are used for work that's done in the field. Hu de mishalem. So those kind of things that are concealed inside, you're going to be chayav to pay for. But kalim, shein darkan lahatman begodish. But those kind of kalim that it's not usual to hide them inside of a pile of grain, like a wallet, a purse of money, loy mishalem. That Racham say you're not going to pay. So that's the second case, and so yeah, they do agree to some degree over here to Rabbi Yehuda, but not for any kind of Talmud. So that explains why in our Mishnah, when it wanted to say that Chacham made it to Rabbi Yehuda, it brought the example of a house or of a closet, because over there Chacham agreed to Rabbi Yehuda 100%. No matter what's inside, a house is a place or a closet is a place where you store everything or anything. There he's made 100%. That's why the Mishnah brought the Maidim Chachamim Dafka regarding that case.